Hello and welcome to Notcast 225, I think. Yep, 225. Today is the 8th of August 2022. I'm going to be talking about Metallica's sixth studio album released in 1996, not regarded as a classic of theirs at all. In fact, by many people amongst their worst. Not their worst, and certainly not the album that I think is their worst, because the worst album of theirs is not, despite what you might have heard, Saint Anger. Neither is it this album, released in 1996, Load, which came out on, I think, the 4th of June 1996. And I must admit, me and Metallica had parted ways at that point. Previous episodes, I of course did tell you about when I was a kid with a full head of hair and of course drainpipe jeans, white trainers, listening to a dubbed cassette of And Justice for All, thinking that somehow I'd seen the future of modern music, and its name was not whatever the flavour of the week was. So so we start off very quickly with the live album released in 1993, which kind of leads into as a precursor to the Load period. Effectively, Live Shit, Binge and Purge, which was released as 3 CDs, 2 VHS tapes, a box, a tour program, later a DVD edition, and also a single, One Live, was a way of clearing the decks of the band. I think they'd filmed the Seattle 1989 show and decided not to release it, but then they revisited it and decided to release it before it became obviously too old. So if it had been released in, let's say, 1998, for example, the band feared that people were going, look how good Metallica once were compared to how rubbish they are now. Whereas the strange thing is, Metallica always brought it on stage. They didn't always bring the best of their work to the studio, which we will hear when we hear Load. But first off, they started with their 1994 Shit Hits the Sheds tour. And the Shit Hits the Sheds tour, which was a summer in 1994, is not particularly well documented. There's a couple of bootlegs which are going around. The most obvious and recent ones are the recordings from the Woodstock Festival, which was on pay-per-view television. A staggering 93 minutes of live Metallica there. There seem to be an awful lot of these, pressed once, then disappearing forever, copyright kind of exploiting releases recently. This is the vinyl edition of Metallica at Woodstock, which features the whole set as recorded on television, and it's only 96 minutes. But I also, by the way, I go to record fairs. That's probably not a surprise to those of you that watch these every couple of months, and there is a dealer that sells a lot of overstocks of live recordings. So there's a big burgeoning industry in one-time pressing limited number vinyl live albums, normally historic, 20, 30 years old, aimed at people like me that wish that they were younger but had the same money now that they did then. No, hang on. Wish we had the hair now that we did then, and the money now that we didn't have then. So yeah, that's the market. But they invariably press a few too many of these. Maybe even a limited number of 500 is actually quite a lot for the target market that we've got. And so these end up sitting in the bins for about £5 or £10 for a vinyl live double album. And yes, I buy them because that's the kind of guy I am. After all, if I wasn't me, who else would I be? Don't be yourself. Everyone else is taken, as the cliche goes. And the Woodstock 1994 show that was broadcast on television, and the Shit Hits the Sheds tour, is, I think, quite interesting from a Metallica perspective, because it sees the band. So Lars has trimmed down his drum kit. So he's got less toms, he's got less kind of extra little frills and cymbals and things like that. So he can be more efficient in how he plays. So you watch some of the earlier footage from 92, 93, there's lots of racks of toms and things. But actually by reducing them, he's then actually simplifying his kit and simplifying his playing style, and having to do less of this and more of that, which, if you think about how many thousands of drum hits somebody has to do during the course of a show, it does make a difference. But also, of course, the greatest nemesis that Lars has ever had is the drummer that he used to be, because the drummer that he is, and he did say that he didn't practice, and sometimes honestly it really showed. He was not as good a drummer as he once was, which then showed the only major official release that we have from 1994, and this is not particularly well known, is this unusual documentary called Metallimania, which was recorded by oh god, I've forgotten the name of the chap here. Mark Pashke. Sorry, Mark. I watched this, and this is an unusual home shot video of one man in a camcorder trying to do an extended version of Heavy Metal Parking Lot, interviewing Metallica fans, the utter dunderheads that they often are, in states of both advanced undress and unsobriety, as they kind of sleep through the Metallica song, or have hangovers, or tell everyone that they're going to fight and kill everybody, and that they would sell their daughter just to have a 5-minute telephone conversation with Lars Ulrich. This is at best a curiosity, at worst it is the type of fan-made footage that occasionally you would see where someone puts up something on YouTube because my incredible journey on tour with Bob Dylan, and it's like, dude, you never even met Bob Dylan, you just drove to the same cities he did and you went to see him play the same songs. No, Metallimania was a Poundland classic, so it was in the early days of DVD, 2003, 2004. VHS was dead, and everything was getting a DVD release. And this is clearly a transfer of a crappy old VHS tape, which was clearly home distributed and sold by the guy, and then kind of sold to somebody and then put onto a DVD in exchange for money. It's not good. Don't watch it. I think it's fair to say it is at best a glorified home movie, very similar to the Pink Floyd one from 1988, shot by one of the lighting guys called Still First in Space, which also has about that much Pink Floyd content on it. There is tiny snippets of a number of songs and one full performance of Metallica and Rob Halford from Judas Priest performing one of the Judas Priest songs. I forget which one it is. It's got fire in the title, probably. Knowing my luck, I had to bear a little break. So 1994, Metallica touring the US. I wasn't in the US, so as far as I was concerned, Metallica were non-existent. I didn't know what they were up to. Probably sitting around, flying jets and surfing and stuff like that. 1995 saw the band break cover for a handful of shows, 3 whole shows, maybe possibly even 4, which are documented in this book, So What? The Compendium of the Metallica fanzine. Metallica at this point had become Metallica Incorporated, a multi-tendril, multinational, multi-million pound industry. They had a fan club. They started doing the things called the fan cams, VHS tapes. They've become an industry in working their fan base and doing some absolutely ridiculous merchandising, including, of course, this very shiny and now unfashionable Load soccer top, which I bought from a thrift store about 5 or 6 years ago for, I think, probably about £4 or £5, which probably sold for about 50 at the time. Big premium bit of rock cotton. Metallica were a multi-million-dollar industry, and they wanted to make sure that they had those multi-millions of your dollars. They played 3 shows. London Astoria, Donington, and one of the smaller villages in North Canada called, I think, Toyukyuk. I don't remember exactly where. And then finally broke cover with their first recorded material in 5 years. Their first single, Until It Sleeps. Here is the limited edition red vinyl 10-inch single, which is backed with 2x4 live and the Herman Melville mix of Until It Sleeps. Now, Until It Sleeps, by the way, is I think it's a very underrated Metallica song. It really is. Possibly not the best Metallica song. Great classic rock track, but not a great Metallica song as such. Songs like That Was Just Your Life, Master of Puppets, Creeping Death, they're great Metallica songs. Until It Sleeps is, I think, a very underrated Metallica song. And so the single came out on a 10-inch red vinyl, back to the live performance of the track 2x4, recorded at the Donington Festival, their first headline session at Donington, and a Moby remix of Until It Sleeps called the Herman Melville mix. In the UK, there are also 2 CD singles of Until It Sleeps. This one is backed with 2x4 live and FOBD, the demo of Until It Sleeps, which I'll come back to. And this is backed with the Kill Ride medley and the Maybe remix of Until It Sleeps, and it comes in a 2 CD pack, because double CDs were all the rage at that point. And what you can see first and foremost is actually a big change in Metallica, because they've gone from the pusshead artistry that they had previously into more kind of abstract visual depictions of non-specific things. So you kind of think about the strong visual identity that you had on Master of Puppets, Justice for All, even Black itself, with that very dark grey snake on a black background. The strength of the visual artistry, as you looked at that and you went, that's an album cover. When it comes to Loads, and you look at the album cover for Loads, you don't necessarily look at it and go, that's definitely an album cover. It isn't. This is a work of art called Semen and Blood 2, which it does say on the inner sleeve, the artist, whose name I have not committed to memory, but you look at it and go, it's abstract. It's not as meaningful as the album covers for the other records. So you're then starting to go, okay, so what are Metallica actually doing here? What are they trying to do? So I think it's fair to say that when the 4th of June 1996 came, Metallica made a release date. They didn't necessarily make an album. They recorded a lot of songs in their demo sessions, 30 songs, and in the demo sessions that they recorded, it was often Lars and James, and Lars was going na 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 na, getting jiggy with it, or whatever the lyric was, and then had to write the lyrics that fit the meter of the song in which he'd worked. So he didn't do the Elton John thing, which you write the lyrics first and then you find a tune that goes to it. And by the way, there is an incredible video of Elton John singing the Oven instructions to Richard E. Grant's Oven, where he turns the Oven instructions into a song. Load and all the Metallica songs came a slightly different ways. The lyrics came last and then had to be forced to fit into the meter of the song, which had already been written. And where Load, I think, is perhaps one of Metallica's worst records, is twofold. First one, and by the way, not the most important one, is the art. The art doesn't necessarily communicate anything. It's an abstract, and you're kind of looking at it going, well, what is it? Is that a scary face there? Or I don't know. Is that a monster? Is that where someone's cut through a chili and it shows a screaming face, and then you go, so that's the album cover, right? No, it's an abstract thing, and I think this is where the band were less focused than they'd been previously. So this was the first album of Metallica's where I think the band were behind the curve. So they, instead of defining the zeitgeist of the times, they started to listen to what was going on around them and absorbing those influences. And perhaps not as obviously as when Def Leppard did the terrible ambulance chasing of Slang and X, where they decided to get gritty, torn jeans and go do urban songs about life as a trucker. Because obviously, Def Leppard in 1992 became obsolete the moment that Adrenalize came out. What you saw was a lot of rock bands in around about 1992, 1993 suddenly said, oh no, we've always wanted to be dark and urban and gritty, and the fact that we've done a song called Girls, Girls, Girls and Strippers and Whores and Fuck Like a Beast or whatever it is, that was just, it's not what we really are about. We're really about songs about miserable, sad men whose wives have left them while they're driving trucks with torn jeans and just big hair. So, for example, Def Leppard did Slang, which is awful. Bon Jovi did Keep the Faith, which again is an album where you try and go, oh, I see what you're trying to do. Van Halen had done For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. And this is where they were like trying to get more meaningful, I think, very heavily influenced by Nirvana, which suddenly had made all the spandex rockers obsolete overnight. And Metallica had managed to ride that out because the summer or the autumn of 1991 had seen the release of the Black Album, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, the Soundgarden album, Nevermind, Pearl Jam's 10, all within the space of about 6 weeks. And then Metallica kind of tried to ride out the trend of Alice in Chains and Nirvana and Soundgarden and all that, and then came back 5 years later. And I think it was quite deliberate, actually, that they toured the heck out of the Black Album, because one, touring was how they sold records. Secondly, it bought them time and money to be able to think about what they're going to do next. Because if they did an album in 1994 called, Miserable Flannel Man, for example, everyone would go, clearly you're ambulance chasing, you're behind the curve. Whereas Load kind of came out 5 years after Kurt Cobain had been dead, more than 2 years by the time that Load came out. And so therefore, by the time Load came out, Metallica had almost kind of sweated out a generation of music and survived to come out the other time. But it is also dated, so you can hear Metallica are operating in the slipstream of bands like Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. They've got like a minimal songwriting approach. So when I talked earlier on about Lars reducing his kit down and taking the number of toms that he had out, the drumming on Load is very, very straightforward, very minimal, very unlike the drumming that you would have had on previous albums. And one of the things that I think that differentiates Metallica from other bands is the fact that basically they do prog stadium thrash metal, which is a very unusual genre. Lots and lots of tempo shifts, complicated songs, and yet with Load, and certainly the subsequent album, the drum patterns were very, very minimal, very reduced, very boom 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 boom, like a human metronome. Although obviously it's Lars, so you can't have a human metronome because a metronome plays in time. We had Kirk had downtuned his songs to, I think it's E flat. He'd take a heavy influence from people like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix. He's playing a lot of bluesier scales, and that also taking that key down actually made the singing easier for James. So he wasn't constantly straining at the edge of his natural range. He wasn't up there. He was kind of like down here. He was able to cruise melodically at quite an achievable level that he could easily sing 200 nights a year without having to worry about. But the flip side of that is that Load became an album that is one-dimensional, and the dimension is not particularly interesting. So the lyrics, by the way, you've got the more simplistic approach to the songs. Each song was made of a number of parts. Like any song is made of a number of parts. You've got an intro, you've got a verse, you've got a chorus, you've got a repeated verse, you've got a chorus, you've got a bridge, maybe you've got a solo, then you've got maybe another chorus, and then a chorus, and then maybe a wiggly woo solo. So most songs have got most Metallica songs have got like 5 parts in there. So if you put, let's say there's 12, 14 songs on here, so really you need to come up with 60 pieces of music, but each one of those pieces of music in some cases can be repeated multiple times. That is because I live near a main road. By the way, if you can hear the siren, the police are not coming for me. If they are, I do not know about it. But what you've got with Load is effectively you've got kind of like 55 or so pieces of music that are repeated. Some of them are repeated multiple times, but with variations in the lyrics. But then the lyrics, when James sings them, are na 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 na, getting jiggy with it. And so what you end up is you end up with lyrics that are very, very minimal as well. So in fact, you've got like the most simple songs on the Black Album, songs like Sad But True, Holier Than Thou, The God That Failed, The Struggle Within, those types of songs. And you've got those kind of songs. And Load is basically, with its subsequent album, Reload, it's basically one brilliant album and a bunch of average album tracks. And when you spread them both out amongst both of the records, you get a diluted product. So Metallica didn't make an album, they made a release date. There are more songs on Load than the band actually wrote, which sounds bitchy, because basically Load has a lot of filler on it. I listened to it today, there's probably 8 great tracks, there's maybe 4 bad ones. So for example, the 8 great ones, and I'm going in no particular order here: King Nothing, Ain't My Bitch, Until It Sleeps, King of the Day, Hero of the Day, Bleeding Me, Wasting My Hate, Mama Said, which is obviously a very different song from anything that Metallica has done previously, and The Outlaw Torn. Some of these songs the band have both never played live and are utterly forgettable. I listened to them today and I'm like, I do not remember. I listened to Thorn Within and Ronnie, and I was kind of sat there going, what the hell are these songs about? I don't even know, because the lyrics are so unfocused, they're so abstract, they're not about anything. So you listen to them and go, well, there's words and they make some kind of sense, but they're not. So I couldn't connect to a lot of these songs, and that's why I checked out from being a Metallica fan at the time. Of course, the band still brought it on stage. They were phenomenal on stage, but I listened to the album and I was like, no, you've lost me. You've gone down a road I'm not following here. And the lyrics move from kind of complex, which address moral and social issues and sometimes political issues, things like Disposable Heroes, Damage Incorporated, and Justice for All, Harvester of Sorrow, even songs like The Unforgiven and Sad But True, and then move to more personal, more introspective kind of lyrical conceits. And sometimes those work, but sometimes the lyrics don't mean anything. So, for example, you've had 5 years where you've had the ability to write as many songs as you like, and James is frantically rushing around trying to write lyrics at the last minute in a way that sometimes makes sense. And I was like, have you got nothing to say for the past 5 years? You've got all these incredible experiences. You become financially self-sufficient, you become famous, you had to deal with the gap between the identity and the reality. You have all of those experiences to deal with, and how people perceive you to be somebody you're really not. They think that you're a version called James Hetfield, which doesn't really exist. Um, and you end up writing lyrics where I kind of read them and I go, what are you trying to say? I don't really know. I'm trying to work out what. Now, a lot of the songs have some lyrical obsessions, and they're moved from ideas to feelings. These are songs about feelings, but when someone's starting to write about feelings for the first time, it does feel a little bit like a teenager who's writing songs about being sad because a girl won't kiss him. For the Load album, a lot of these songs have lyrics that are abstract kind of explorations of things like addiction and integrity and reality and death and personality. And one of the things that runs all through in a huge amount of the number of Metallica songs is that dichotomy between the things that reality forces you to be and the person that you actually are, and the mask that you have to wear to be an individual. They're in loads and loads of the songs. Eye of the Beholder, for example, Harvester of Sorrow, even kind of songs like The Unforgiven, things like Hero of the Day, Mama They Tried to Break Me. These are very, very clearly songs that are around the gap between identity and reality, but the lyrics are not focused. They're not concise. They meander. There's too many extra syllables in there. I mean, honestly, when you listen to I Disappear, I have never heard a song that has so many yeahs. I didn't realise that the word yeah could have a syllable that had like 13 syllables in it. It's some of the longest words uses of the word yeah and death I've ever come across. And I'm going to pick out I Disappear as a tragic example of being completely uninspired lyrically, because it goes yeah, here I go again, here I go, I go, I go, I go, I go. And it's like the song from the Doodle and the Blue Cat, where the army of the blue soldiers are going, we go, we go, we go, we go, we go. Go where? Go west, young man. Where are you going? What are you doing? Going home? Why? No, you just go. And these are songs which don't have very much to say lyrically. They're musically, they're very simplistic, they're very reduced, they're very straightforward. Um, Between this and the subsequent album Reload, which I'll mention in another episode, there is one really good Metallica record and a whole bunch of B-sides. But the flip side of that is each album on its own is longer than it needs to be, and somehow has less to say and takes longer to say than any other Metallica record. This is the longest Metallica album. It's 78 minutes 59 seconds. So long, in fact, that the last track on the album, The Outlaw Torn, had its ending chopped off and turned into a fade so that it could fit on a CD. And I kind of going, really? You've taken the best bit of one of the best songs out, and you haven't just taken a minute of repetitive nonsense out of The Thorn Within or Ronnie or The Cure. I'm baffled by that decision. As you could have lost a minute out of any of those songs. Heck, you could have lost 15 seconds out of Cure, Poor Twisted Me, Thorn Within, Ronnie. Nobody would have noticed, and you could have had a proper ending to the Outlaw Torn. But now they just faded it, which to me kind of screams that the band were in a rush and in a hurry to make a date as opposed to make a record. I mean, in some respects, this actually is an album that launched a genre, and the genre is existential rock. As so much as there's an awful lot of navel gazing in Load. There's an awful lot of self-analysis. There's an awful lot of discussion around emotions and feelings, and look what you made me do because you wouldn't let me drink or something, whatever that is. But it's unfocused lyrically, and that's reflected in the cover shot. It's reflected in the artwork that we have inside the album, which, by the way, I haven't even opened yet. I probably should. So let's look at the inner sleeve. And by the way, this is the 2016 Blackened Records repressing of the album. I did have, or more correct, my brother did have an original 1996 vinyl copy, but it got lost in the wars, which is such a shame. And again, you look at the inner sleeve. This was the inner sleeve, as opposed to a separate kind of. And then you look at those pictures there, and you kind of go, "Well, what are you trying to communicate there?" So, you've got sunglasses, you've got eyeliner. Oh, look, you've got a piercing. How radical are you? And then you've got tiny bits of lyrics, and I'm trying to work out what these songs. And again, you've got the covers are inspired by Hieronymus Bosch. Those art paintings that you can interpret into anything, which are clearly also kind of like a big deal of the Watchmen. And you kind of go, well, what on earth are you trying to say here? Because I don't really know. You're four dudes, and well, you're moody. I know that. You've got eyeliner, and oh look, Lars has got eyeliner, and all these photographs are taken by Anton Corbijn. And with all due respect to Anton Corbijn, who has a fantastic and unique visual eye, when you look at something where the photograph's been taken by Anton Corbijn, you're not looking at a photograph of Metallica. You're looking at an Anton Corbijn photograph of Metallica. And that's where it becomes very stylized, and you end up kind of going, okay, so thorn within, find me guilty when true guilt is from within. Well, okay, then the lyrics that they've decided to pick out for Ronnie to put on the lyric sheet, this gives you an idea of just how unfocused the album is. Ronnie, lost my way this bloody day. What does that mean? These lyrics are not very good. I'm going to be polite about it. They're not very good. You've got too many songs and not enough things to say with those songs. So no, I think Load actually could be really good, but what it needs is the album needs enormous amounts of editing. It needs 4 songs taking off it. It needs better lyrics. I have got better lyrics than anything on Load, apart from possibly King Nothing. That said, we have some fabulous songs on here. The one thing I will say is the sequencing for this album is way off, because side 2, track 1, King Nothing, that is the song that should open the album. It's probably the best song on the album, and it's also a song which actually very, very cynically kind of reprises the ending of Enter Sandman lyrically, about going on about off to Never Neverland. And it should be the first song on the album, absolutely. I think King Nothing is an absolutely classic Metallica track. And if I was writing Metallica set list, it would be in every single one of them. It's got the most prominent bass line that I think Jason has ever written, that really shows that Jason was one of the hidden weapons in the band, and they never really gave him the space and respect that he deserved on record. He's a great bass player. But wasn't given the opportunity to shine because of the, Lars and James seeing themselves as the Lennon and McCartney of thrash metal. Whereas sometimes, frankly, you need a George Harrison or a Ringo in the band. And King Nothing should be the opening track on the album. Unquestionably. I think, by the way, my theory is that King Nothing is actually about Axl Rose. The idea that in the middle of 1996, when this album was released, Guns N' Roses had disappeared from the face of the planet. They were clearly spending millions of pounds in the studio with an ever-rotating lineup, shedding members with a frequency that seems like some kind of horror movie, like Friday the 13th Guns N' Roses edition. So, for example, at that point in 1996, when this album was recorded, Load, that is, not the other album by Guns N' Roses, the band had lost a guitar player, they'd lost 2 guitar players, they'd lost a drummer, the bassist was on the verge of stepping out, and Guns N' Roses had effectively become a duo of Axl Rose and Dizzy Reed, with a replacement guitar player called Paul Hughes that nobody actually knew what he looked like, and no drummer as such, some guy called Josh Freese, who maybe was playing drums. So Guns N' Roses, it's kind of like going to Axl going, look, you and I, Metallica and Guns had done that tour in 1992. They'd shared that environment. They'd both headlined stadiums, and Axl Rose had crunched his chances up and thrown them away, whereas Metallica were still there, fighting on the front lines, playing live, bringing the noise, even if it wasn't really metal. Of course, there was a frequent debate that maybe they shouldn't be called Metallica anymore. They should be called Alternica, because it's alternative rock with huge chunks of country and western in it. That's a completely different discussion for a completely different type of person. But there's a lot of validity in this. Any traces of the Metallica that made the thrash metal classics that are Master of Puppets and of Justice for All have been obliterated and steamrolled out of existence with Load. Now, Load is, of course, a triumph of artistic integrity and vision. The band did exactly what they wanted to do. They released what they wanted to release, and we bought it. 648,000 people bought this album in the week it came out. It sold 5 million copies in the US alone. I've got to be honest, I have no idea why. It's not very good. Think about the sales figures that we've got for Hardwired to Self-Destruct, which are probably like 300,000 or a million or something. This album is not 15 times better than that. Hardwired to Self-Destruct is 15 times better than Load, and Death Magnetic is 15 times better than Hardwired to Self-Destruct. You may be working out now which one of the Metallica albums is my least favourite and which one is my favourite. We aren't there yet. But as an album, it's a bit stylized. You can kind of go, where is Metallica and what have you done with them? You replace them with guys in cigars and Cuban hats and looking like they're in some kind of weird Scarface remake by Quentin Tarantino or something, and you kind of go, what is this about? What happened to those four angry rock dudes that got replaced by millionaires that are the main shareholders and directors of Metallica Incorporated? And make no mistake about it, Load is the first album that was released by Metallica Incorporated, a vast multi-million-pound merchandising industry of which an album was just another bit of product. It may have been the most obvious bit of product, but it was just another bit of merchandise to be sold to you alongside baseball shirts and action figures and brake mats and no doubt Metallica fuel scented candles and all that rubbish. It really got to the point, everything was merchandised. And although the band were wearing the influences of Alice in Chains and Jimi Hendrix and Tom Waits and Nick Cave and Leonard Cohen and Nirvana and all those type of things in here, what they weren't doing is that they were being a product of their influences as opposed to necessarily being the best Metallica that they could be. They weren't playing to their strengths. Now, of course, you can go, well, if you start to repeat yourself, it's kind of like a form of artistic death. But having listened to some of this album, in fact, I listened to all of it today, there's some artistic death that's going on here because they're very, full credit to them for stepping outside of their comfort zone, but they're stepping into their uncomfortable zone and they're not very good at it. So if I had my choice, then Cure, Poor Twisted Me, Thorn Within, Ronnie, out, unquestionably out, outie, out. And then I drafted maybe 4 songs from the Reload album, which I'll come to when I talk about Reload. The lyrical obsessions of the album, by the way, are very clearly around things like alcoholism, compulsion, disease, control. Ain't My Bitch, for example, the opening track, he talks about it ain't my bitch, but when he talks about it ain't my bitch, he's talking about the bitch in a simplistic term, like he's got 99 problems and a bitch ain't one, so it ain't his bitch. He's talking about his problems, the compulsions, the thing that force him to do the things that he feels like he's got to do. This is an album that is steeped in and very aware of alcoholism and cocaine and controlled substances and other naughty drugs that you shouldn't be taking, and the influence that those have upon people. So, Ain't My Bitch is one of them. The House That Jack Built is very much around that. The Cure is the same kind of thing. Mama Said is dealing with that as well. Even things like The Outlaw Torn, they're all dealing with the concept of what is it that forces me to be the me that I am. Clearly somebody has spent some time on the psychologist's couch in the years around this, trying to analyse and understand their feelings and their emotions and their drivers. And at the same point, there's a catastrophic event that affected James Hetfield in the gap in between the Black Album and the release of Loud, which was the death of his father through cancer. And you can hear that in the song Until It Sleeps. You can hear that in Pleading Me. You can hear it in Mama Said as well. So Until It Sleeps, for example, that he sings about in Until It Sleeps is cancer. Now that can be a metaphor for disease, but it's about the death of a father figure. Now, somewhat strangely, Until It Sleeps was a top 5 hit in the UK. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. We were there. I bought it, as you can tell by the 10-inch single I've got down there and the 2 CD singles. But also, of course, Until It Sleeps very, very clearly wears its influences on its sleeves. So when we talk about the demo version of it, which is on the CD single, which I don't know where I've stuck it right now, it's somewhere, I'll find it in a bit. On the demo of Until It Sleeps, it's referred to as, here it is on the CD single, FOBD demo. So the FOBD demo, now depending on who you talk to, That stands for Fell on Black Days, because it's been influenced by Soundgarden, and there's a demo version of it where you can hear the band singing Fell on Black Days during the 6/4 time signature section. I also think FOBD, I always thought it stood for Fuck Off Bitch Die, which, is an uncompromising title for the song. But the band are also wearing their influences pretty brazenly, because on the single to Hero of the Day, here we have the CD single of Hero of the Day, part 2 of a 2 CD set. Track 4 is called Mouldy. Mouldy is the demo of Hero of the Day, and it's called Mouldy because it reminded the band of the type of guitar lines that Bob Mould was writing. So Bob Mould of Husker Du and Sugar, and of course the fabulous albums Copper Blue and Beaster. On there, although I'm jumping ahead a little bit, the band very clearly pitting their troubles and their identity to the mast. So we have Load here, the CD version. This is still the version that has the edited bit in it. This has got an expanded booklet compared to the LP cover. It's got extra photographs that are in there. Now, one of the things that James Hetfield was very, very clear about is that he didn't like a lot of the photographs of the band. He said he took out about half of the photos and went, no, we're not having that one. So these ones, you kind of sit there and go, are these really the same 4 guys in black denim that made And Justice for All? I mean, sure, it looks like them, but they've changed. Something's different there. And so, it was almost by looking at it, you go, right, okay, so that is what's this photo here? Oh, yeah. That's Metallica, all photographed and stylized by Anton Corbijn, and you kind of go, what are you trying to say here? And to be honest, they're not quite sure what they're trying to say, but they're saying it loudly, repeatedly, and over 78 minutes and 59 seconds. In Australia, by the way, Load came with a slightly different configuration. It had in it, this is the Australian version, Load the Interview, a promotional CD of interviews that was put on there like that. So this is the Load 2 CD version, which came from Australia. And the second single from the album, which was released in the UK, was Hero of the Day, which got a staggering 4 formats in the UK. Hero of the Day, which it was very clearly designed to be the big hit single. This is one of the formats. This is the Motor Headache EP, which features 4 songs recorded by the band in 1995 at Lemmy's 50th birthday party, where they called themselves the Lemmys, and that versions of Overkill, Damage Case, Stone Dead Forever, and Too Late, Too Late. And it comes in a poster pack here. I don't quite know why anybody ever did this, but here's quite how you have. Oh well, that's designed to be blue tacked to your wall if you're 14. Of course, any poster worth its salt shouldn't be kind of folded up. It should be rolled so that it doesn't have the creases on it. But then, who's going to be selling a CD with a poster that's rolled up in there? It's going to be absolutely huge, enormous, in fact. The 2 CD singles of Hero of the Day in the UK. This one's backed with Stone Dead Forever and Too Late, Too Late, which was recorded during rehearsals, and the mouldy version of the track. This is backed with Overkill and Damage Case, and Outer B-Sides mix of Hero of the Day, which is remixed by 7 Keys, whoever they are, whatever band they're in, I don't know. Metallica were clearly fluffing out. They had too much stuff and not enough material to release. There was a 12-inch of Hero of the Day. Here it is. It comes in a silver kind of sleeve there, and it's backed with the demo version of Mouldy and the Outer B-Sides mix of Hero of the Day and Overkill. And you kind of go, oh, well, that's abstract. I don't quite know what you're trying to say, but you are saying something. Yeah, definitely. And it's quite a nice little 12-inch, but absolutely not essential. Of course, all this stuff will be on the inevitable Load 14-disc Super Mega set, because the band were recording everything. They were recording every show, they were filming every show, every rehearsal, every soundtrack, every fart, just in case some gold came out. And most of that was actually turned into Fan Can number 2. Here's the CD for it, which is studio rehearsals featuring versions of Fade to Black, King Nothing, One, Wherever I May Roam. Oh no, actually this is the wrong one. This was recorded at Slim's in San Francisco on the June the 10th, 1996, which was a fan club show. And this is a live album recorded on that day. Fan Can 1, I think, had some live in the studio jamming, which is just generally it's the kind of thing that you'd listen to once, but you wouldn't want to listen to it more than once. Third single from the album was Mama Said, a single guitar and voice. Here's the 7-inch picture disc of Mama Said, the only vinyl edition from the UK, backed with yet another abstract picture of some stuff. God knows what stuff it is, but there it is. There's some stuff for you. An abstract bit of Metallica. And it's backed with Ain't My Bitch live at Irvine Meadows. There were 2 CD singles that went with Mama Said. This backed with So What live, Creeping Death live, and a demo of Mama Said. And this backed with live versions of King Nothing, Whiplash, and the 7-inch edit of Mama Said. Again, completely useless. There's nothing in there as a completist. No new studio recordings, just some demos and some live shit, which we've already got a dozen times. In America, King Nothing was released as a single. It was backed with a live version of, I think, Ain't My Bitch, which is on the 7-inch here. But it might be backed with a live track of something else. But how many bloody Metallica live tracks do you need? There's a lot. You don't need any more than you've already got. 2020 saw the release of the Fan Club 7-inch, the Motherload EP, which was recorded in Brunsum in the Netherlands on September the 10th. And this is part of the Metallica Vinyl Club. You've got a 7-inch here with some Metallica tattoos. Although, of course, we all know, stickers. Everyone gets a Metallica tattoo anyway, apart from me. And then there's a Motherload 7-inch single, which has Sad But True and Whiplash. And then I think there's a download card that's in there as well. I am not a member of Metallica's Vinyl Club for 2022 because the postage on those 4 12-inches was $79 fucking dollars, and I am not paying $79 to have 4 12-inches posted to me from America. The Vinyl Club in 2020, £7.99 for postage. I'm willing to pay $7.99 for postage, not $79.99. And of course, I emailed them and went, guys, this is a lot of money. And they went, postage is postage, mate. You either join or you don't. It's up to you. We don't give a shit. I'm like, fine. And of course, if you go on Reddit or Twitter, and lots of people are going, cost is fucking ridiculous. And they're absolutely right. So Metallica went on tour. They stepped out and they started to use MTV. They started to use radio broadcasts, and they started to use the web as a way of getting live footage to people. There was lots and lots of live bootlegs. Here's just one of them. This is recorded in Copenhagen, I think, in 1996. Full show, and the CD version of Berserker does feature some radio chatter from a guy occasionally that can be very, very easily edited out. But if you need a cheap and affordable mixing desk 1996 show, this is about £9 on CD. And as I mentioned previously, I sometimes pick up live shit. So when I went to the record fair the other day, I picked up the vinyl edition of that, Berserker, which came as a 2 double LP editions. This features, again, Copenhagen 1996 on 2 black vinyl discs. And then there's a limited edition. I looked this up on Discogs. This is 300 copies. But this was, again, £10 because no one was buying it at the 30 or so pounds that they wanted to charge. This is the limited edition because it is a rather curious kind of splatter vinyl. Not very splattery, but splatter vinyl nonetheless. I thought £10 for that. That looks quite reasonable, really. And I don't have a live album from that particular tour, so I'll buy it. So the band went on tour. They played everywhere, and I didn't see them because I thought Load was crap, and I am right to think Load is crap because Load is crap. It's the second worst Metallica album, or at least it's the second worst Metallica album of Metallica originals that they don't do with anybody else. So they went on tour. Lots and lots of shows were filmed and recorded, and they did do the Cunning Stunts, the juvenile title for their live DVD recorded at Fort Worth in Texas on May the 9th and 10th, 1997. This was at the very cutting edge of DVD technology when it was released in 1999. Hard to believe this is 23 years old now. I mean, it's got a documentary, it's got a viewer-controlled choice of camera angles for 3 songs, and it's got stereo sound as well as full motion menus. Aren't you lucky? Some DVDs now don't have full motion menus. Anyway, Cunning Stunts um, was a great little live show. It was. I watched it and I was like, maybe Metallica aren't bloody terrible. Maybe I should have gone to see them. Well, I didn't. I didn't see them on this tour. I thought Load was a pile of shit at the time. It didn't reflect where I was. The album was unfocused. The lyrics were crap and sloppy, and I was not a huge fan of it. It's aged better over time. But I think when you listen to Load and Reload, you have to regard them as effectively 2 halves of a double album. And then you can make your own running order for Load and Reload. The perpetual message board story, which is all the messages boards, if you've ever been on a Metallica message board, there's always a thread going, how would you do Load and Reload if you had to make them into just one album? Well, let me tell you... Exactly, I'm not going to tell you. I mean, I will do post up my alternate track listings for them and my running orders, but down there, so you don't have to hear me read out a list of song titles like this. It should open with King Nothing, and it should end with the full-length version of the Outlaw Torn found on the Memory Remains single, and the Memory Remains single is the one that comes from the Reload album. And of course, after this, the band released another studio album called Reload, and I'm going to talk about that in the next episode of my Metallica Notcast. But my next one is not going to be about Metallica. Right now, I don't even know what it's going to be about. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to me witter on for 46 minutes about Metallica's Load album. I hope you enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the album. Take care of yourselves. Stay beautiful. See you soon. Bye.